Okay, good. All right, so I will now call to order the THPRD Board of Directors Retreat for October 13th, 2021. Jessica, can you please call roll?
Tia Ping.
Here.
Heidi Edwards.
Here.
Barbie Miner. Felisa de Monteblanco.
Here.
Alfredo Moreno.
I'm here. Were you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yep,
Oh,
we got
okay,
you.
sorry.
Would you like me to start us off here, Tia?
Sure. I don't
I
have
can do
anything. Yeah.
I could do that. Thomas and I have, we've got our skit together pretty well. Mainly that coffee is the start of all good conversations, coffee or tea, depending on your pleasure. Let's see, first off, I wanted to do a quick intro. Courtney Wilton is on the line with us. He is our interim CFO. And of course, you have a variety of staff that are listening in. Some will be presenting. There's Courtney there. We'll have Aisha will be leading off the presentation on the operations update. And it'll just be a brief overview, as well as getting into our what's in front of us in terms of strategic planning, because I think that's a component of the conversations you all are having in terms of our values and priorities set up for the upcoming budget season. So with that, maybe Thomas, I'll turn it your way before Aisha's way if you have any initial comments.
No, I am just delighted to see you all. What a year it's been. Thank you so much for your stewardship and your leadership during these tumultuous times. I think everybody in the district is grateful to you and has benefited from your wise stewardship. And I look forward to being with you today, and I'll let Doug and staff start off.
Okay, Aisha, please.
Yes, hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Aisha Panis, your Park Services Director, and I have a presentation that covers a couple of elements for you tonight. So moving on to the next slide, and the one after that, actually. I will be talking about an overview of our operations, how things have been going since we last heard, since you last heard from us. And then we also have some news for you on the long-range planning front. So I'll cover a couple of those items. So just the next slide is just the title of that section. We are open, we remain open. It's very exciting. So I'm going to cover a few things here about how our budget monitoring process is going, what we've learned so far to date this fiscal year, how our staffing is going, as well as a facility reopening schedule. So next slide. Just a reminder, when we met last fiscal year, we did adopt a budget that was fully loaded. It was a traditional budget. It had all the same appropriations that you'd see normally, and that was about $64 million. Because of the pandemic, because of the reduction in revenue that we've been noticing, anticipating to continue, we have developed some revised spending plans that operate at a much lower level than what our appropriation called for. So our overall budget is more in the $59 million range. And so what we've been doing is monitoring our actuals against what we had predicted would happen, because very quickly after we moved into the new fiscal year, we had our revised spending plans developed. And that just says this is where we think we can go based on what we are able to provide to the community. So in the first 2 months of the fiscal year, on the next slide, you'll see some of our observations. We haven't come to you today with a full quarterly operations or spending plan update because we have not yet finalized that first month of fall term, which is September. So just based on July and August numbers, what we found is that our revenues are largely hitting the targets that we identified in our revised plans. There are some deviations from that, and we've been able to manage those by managing our part-time staff. So we've talked with you before that if we don't have the registrations for our class, then we don't run the class, so we don't have the cost on the part-time side. So we have managed to equalize between those lowered revenues and the lowering of our expenditures as well. We do continue to have staffing challenges, and I'll talk more on that in a moment. We we have just found that it's challenging to get folks in the door. There's a lot of other options out there. People are choosing different things and different ways to spend their time. And so we have struggled to fill all of our open positions, and that's been across the district. But to end this slide on a positive note, what we have noticed is that our return to the monthly pass was just entering into very unfamiliar territory. We knew that if we charged a certain amount at the door each time someone came to visit us, we could count on a certain amount of money. And so we estimated if those folks ended up buying monthly passes, what do we think we'd need to do to make up all that revenue? And we're happy to report that our monthly pass sales have exceeded the projections that we had hoped for. So that has been a very good news story, and we are continuing to monitor it. We had promised that towards the beginning of the year, we would be analyzing whether we could offer additional passes. In the past, we've not only offered monthly, we've also offered 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month passes. So just because of how uncertain our circumstances have been, we didn't want to run headlong into an annual pass, but we will be monitoring these numbers closely and may come to you, letting you know more good news about this in the future. So next slide. We have an update on staffing. I think the last time we talked to you about our challenges, we had 300 open positions across the organization. And we were trying to run a lot of programming during the summer, and so that number was large. We are now down to 25. So it's a much lower number, and it reflects just a change in the programming. Summer is a very busy season for us. So it's reflective of how we've moved into fall. But we've also managed to move a lot of our full-time recruitments that we've had through the process, and we're in selection phase now. So that has been a heavy lift from our HR department, and we have gotten through a lot of that hiring, and we're moving into sort of the next steps of the recruitment process. We also got the interim CFO, who you met a little bit earlier, and we are going with a recruitment for our finance services position, and we hope to have that person on board as soon as we can, but we expect that will take a few months. And then our other positions that are sort of being held vacant, an aquatics manager position is an example, our recreation services director is an example. Those ones we're waiting and watching to see what kind of participation levels come back to us, what sort of revenue impacts we may have. So there's a lot of different factors that we're looking at, and as we return to something that's more like a pre-pandemic normal, or at least a higher percentage of that number, we will feel more comfortable moving forward with some of those positions. So on the next slide, I just wanted to share with you again that our facility reopening schedule is a bit fluid, no pun intended, with the picture of the pool on the screen there, but we do anticipate that Conestoga's pools will reopen when the construction project ends there, and that is late December, early January. So those two pools will reopen. We do expect that the Raleigh Swim Center will likely close around that time. Our Somerset West has been closed for the season already, and so those typically reopen right at the start of summer term, which is the last few weeks of June. So those would be the next pools to open once Conestoga's back. And then we do have Aloha, Harmon, and Sunset that are not targeted to reopen until sometime in the new fiscal year. But even that date is a little uncertain, and it's all going to be based on whether we have the funding, whether we have the staffing, and whether our participation levels are going to increase to a point where we can financially manage opening new pools. There are some things that we would try before we went straight to reopening a pool. We may look at the hours or the mix of the pools that are open so that we can provide some more capacity. But we are going to be watching that and looking very closely as we move into the next several months. Next slide, please. Now I'll move into our long-range planning update, and just wanted to give you a little bit of awareness of what these are. I know our returning board members know a lot of this information. For Alfredo's benefit, we'll talk a little bit about these things, but we have had a comprehensive plan since 2013, and a lot of the actions and activities, action steps identified in our strategic plan that came from the comprehensive plan have been achieved in that time. So we've long been planning this update on the comprehensive plan side. So On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about what our framework looks like. And at the very top of everything is that community vision. And your board has identified in the past that that is one of our values, is that what we do aligns with our community vision. And we had a vision from 2013 based on a lot of outreach that was done back in 2011, 2012. So with the creation of the Vision Action Plan, we had a whole new picture of what our community members wanted to see provided by THPRD. So we're now in the process of taking that community vision, all the things that we should be doing, and distilling it into an updated comprehensive plan. And that's where you see things like our mission and our vision and our values. And where we anticipate folding in Vision Action Plan is there's the 4 goal areas you saw on the previous slide. Those items will be the framework of the comprehensive plan, but there are other elements that didn't so much come through in those 4 that we absolutely want to talk about. One is embedding DEIA in all of the work that we do. Another is talking about financial sustainability and how important kind of organizational resilience is for being able to accomplish all of the different goals and the actions in the goal areas. And then we also need to talk about innovation and technology and how that supports the work that we do. So those are the things that we anticipate being in our comprehensive plan. And that's intended to truly be more of a 20-year look at what the district will one day be. It'll also contain information about demographics and population counts, and that's information that we're waiting on. There was a delayed census, and there's still some information that we're waiting on to be able to fold into this plan to talk about who we think we will be serving in 20 years. Who are we serving now, and where do we think we'll go, and how do we make everything work within this plan? From that comprehensive plan, then you look at something with a much more near-term horizon, and that is the strategic plan. And so within that document, we look at in the next 3 to 5 years, based on the priorities that you will talk about and confirm today, where do we want to spend our resources? And so what we anticipate is we will hear from you this evening. There may be more conversation beyond this, but that's going to help us build our next budget and likely the budgets that come on. As you've seen, there's many things that we do that take more than just 1 year to accomplish. And so the 3 to 5 year plan really looks at what can we do over the course of the next 3 to 5 years that helps us move nearer to where you see our organization based on the vision that you've heard, and then also what your own priorities are. So on the bottom of this slide, what you see are some functional plans, and that has been a part of our overall sort of system master plan. And these are our various functional plans that talk about how we do what we do. And we had identified between the last comprehensive plan and this plan that we wanted to have something that specifically spoke to facilities, how we build them, how we design them, how we care for them. And so that's something we still intend to do. But what we're thinking about with this new round of long-range planning is that there are elements that talk about priorities and maybe are more policy level items that are in those functional plans that we want to elevate to the comprehensive plan, because that's where the policy framework and those guiding principles should live. And then the functional plans are really much more, you hand to a staff member, this is how we do something. And so those things do change much more frequently than a comprehensive plan or a strategic plan. So our proposal is that those become staff level documents that change over time based on the higher level policy direction that we receive from the comp and strategic plans. On the next slide, I want to talk about CAPRA reaccreditation, because all of these things are tied together. The comp plan, strategic plan, those are all about how we move forward as an organization. The CAPRA reaccreditation, and many of you have seen this, I apologize, but I wanted to share this with our newer board members. The CAPRA reaccreditation is our opportunity to talk about what we have done, to demonstrate that we're a well-run organization, forward-thinking, and we've got a great framework under us. So on this slide, if you hit the return button once, I'll say that 2022 was our planned year for moving forward on this reaccreditation. Because of a few things, one being the demographic information, the census info that we're not able to receive in time to be folded into a plan that then we talk about with CAPRA so that we can submit a self-assessment in the spring of 2022. We have been looking at different options for how we move forward. And so this is a big piece of work. and reflective of that, we have asked for an extension. So on the next return, you'll see that we're hoping instead for a 2023 reaccreditation. This is something that I had a conversation with an NRPA, National Rec and Park Association representative last week, and she said this is a common thing. She understands that we have 2 vacant director level positions, and that is a big reason why many organizations need to take a pause. And we're not seeing this so much as a pause as this just gives us a little breathing room to move through all the steps properly in a time where our organization has been through a lot. Our staff have been working and churning out innovative programming and caring for parks. And so being able to have this breath and this beat to take has been really important. So we should be hearing very soon about that, but we are hopeful that we will have that break. So very quickly in the next couple of slides, I just want to remind you of what CAPRA is all about. And this is our opportunity to show how we are a part of this larger park and recreation network. We are talking about what our agency has done to show that we are of a high quality. And it really gives us an opportunity to see what other agencies have done. We have mentor agencies we can reach out to and ask questions of things that maybe we don't have a strong process on. And it allows us to improve those processes. Next slide, please. There are also some benefits, both to our community, an assurance that we're providing quality services, that we can name ourselves as an accredited agency when we're going for grants, but also internally, it's a way to benchmark ourselves against other agencies. It's a way for us to say, oh, well, this is what our policy says, but we've been implementing it slightly differently. Let's make sure to update that. And so that anyone walking into our organization can look at what we've done and they know how to go about the steps to do a particular project or process. So we've also used it for succession planning, which has been very helpful because, you know, there's a lot of change, a lot of movement. And so we believe that CAPRA has been a wonderful tool for keeping us moving forward. So we intend to do that. And so on the next slide, I'll just show what sort of timeline we're looking at. So we're here with you today, October 2021. We are in process on both the comprehensive and strategic plans. We anticipate another couple of checkpoints in with you to let you know how things are going and to get your input. We are going to continue on through the entire time with CAPRA, and that just means updating our policies, updating our procedures, being able to point to things in the comprehensive and strategic plans where we talk about how we do a certain task. So there will be updates on the bottom line, the CAPRA submission, visit, and hearing. We need to complete a self-assessment report and send that in no later than April of 23 in order to have a visitor team come learn about us and report on what they see in late June. And then we would have a hearing at the fall 2023 conference for NRPA. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does any of my board members have questions?
Perfect. We're going to move towards, thank you, Aisha. We're going to move towards accomplishments, and Holly has got a tight presentation, but again, an opportunity really to acknowledge during very difficult times, some amazing work has happened.
Okay, y'all, Doug and Thomas generously gave me 5 minutes, so I'm hitting start. Put your seatbelts on and move to the next slide because we're going to talk about some rock star stuff that happened this year. And I apologize to all the great staff work that I wasn't able to include. But we were going to begin with resilient programming, and we're picking the word resilient for a reason because this was a year of pivot, pivot, pivot. And we supported continued distance learning when kiddos needed help with education during schooling from home and helping our families in the THPRD community with that process. We supported amazing out-of-school programs, preschool programs. We put our rec mobile where it was needed most, offering free programming through generous grant support out in the community where people are experiencing homelessness, where affordable housing projects are, where buyback communities are. We were able to solicit over $700,000 in grant funding to keep these programs available, including swim lessons and access to free classes and programming. And every step of the way, we integrated our inclusion services to make sure that everyone could participate in programming. Next slide, please. We were shifting services left and right. Huge kudos to maintenance, who had to install signage after signage after signage as COVID rules were changing. We enhanced, cleaned our facilities. We did all sorts of upgrades within facilities to keep up with changing conditions. We moved camps to schools through a partnership with BSD and Camp Achieve, and had summer camps at 20 different schools throughout the community in July. And we kept splash pads going. Are you kidding? This wasn't just the year of the pandemic. We had fires, we had storms, we had a chlorine shortage, and other park agencies were shutting down their splash pads, and our guys came up with something I don't even understand to keep those splash pads going. Next slide, please. Community engagement. Never in my life did I think we would win the United States Best Public Involvement Project of the Year. Whoop, whoop, whoop. This month, we're in international competition for our community visioning process. And we also won the Diversity, Culture, and Inclusion Award and Washington County Harold Haynes Award for that inclusive, multi-layered approach. So excited. Not only did we dream big and come up with talking walls, we got 3 of them done, and $25,000 in grant funding. And we're going to have an amazing one this month at the Aquatic Center. Can't wait to see it. Next slide, please. Okay, huge props to Janine. She is amazing. You and the board and your leadership on SDC changes, affordable housing were amazing. And Reflections Plaza happened with SDC funding going to public open space, another award-winning, beautiful engagement partnership project. We have rebranded Park Patrol, moving from Park Patrol to Safety Services. We are leading with activation and ambassadorship, have amazing stories to tell in this program. We had to rethink our entire summer events strategy, going smaller, going neighborhood. We actually put on more events, served 4,000 people, all following ever-changing COVID guidance and rules that made my head explode. And our volunteer program was amazing, because as our staff numbers were going down, our volunteers were going up to help fill the gap and keep things moving. And we had an amazing, involved, transparent process to look at the affiliate. Julie Rocha in the Sports and Inclusion Department did that stakeholder work group. So it was transparent. It's tough work, but it was great. Next slide, please. Park and trail construction. We completed 3 parks, 1 section of a major community trail. We completed the feasibility study for the West Side Trail Bridge, and we developed a new community engagement process for park naming. Huge shout out for our naming catalog that is really helping us lead with our equity values and recognizing Indigenous peoples, and doing a much better job in the future for naming THPRD properties. Next slide, please. We completed the regional trail inventory, which is critical work because that helps us prepare for capital planning for the future. We secured $170,000 in grant funding to daylight the stream at Raleigh Park. And we managed to, deal with double the usage on our trails. We had to make some trails one way and deal with people in 6 feet and COVID. There were so many people out there, so much to navigate, more trash, more everything, and our staff hit it out of the trail. Not out of the park, but out of the trail. Next slide, please. Building internal capacity. We have continued on the implementation of Tyler Munis. We implemented all new personnel action process in that. We launched the long-awaited welcoming and inclusion team. Oh man, almost 5 minutes. So the welcoming and inclusion team, we started, which gave you your new equity and inclusion statement. We launched affinity groups. We did district-wide training on equity. We're also looking at our employee benefits. We're doing survey work, and we're making sure that we're looking at keeping competitive for part-time employees going into the 22-23 budget. Final slide. All in the world of COVID. There is no new normal. There was just figure it all out, and you can't do it the way you did it before, and you got to do it all, and you got to do it differently. But we did it all by leading with the values of the organization. Thank you so much for these values. We are leading with equity and emphasis on racial equity, sustainability, and commitment to community vision. And these really were our guiding principles as we moved through last year. I think that was 5 minutes and 45 seconds. Sorry.
Well, I know there's going to be, I can just see it, in the board members' faces that I've got to work on Holly's energy level. She just is so calm.
Well, I didn't want anyone to be left out.
And if the pandemic can't stop us, nothing can.
Really?
Kudos to you, Holly, team, staff,
Team.
like this heavy lifting for the last 18 months for sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to display that. Holly did a wonderful job. There were pages left behind, but, you know, ideally, you know, when working with Thomas on this, this is the opportunity for the board to speak and to discuss with each other. And so I think if you're ready, Tia, we can move to the next item, the parking lot, which I think I can, with the board's prerogative, I can tighten this one up reasonably well, but Thomas, it looks like you need to say something.
I do want to say something, if I could, in the spirit of pivoting. I'd like to give board members the opportunity to just kind of voice the accomplishments of the district of which they are most proud this past year, and or accomplishments of you as a board during this past year, because it takes both a wonderful staff doing amazing work on a staff level, but it also takes adept leadership that is thoughtful and strategic at a leadership level. So I just wanted to kind of open it up and give you a few minutes to voice either or both.
Go ahead, Heidi. You can go first.
I'll just continue with what I was saying. I think, wow, what a testament to our staff. I mean, there's been so much that we have done to keep things going and moving in our community, and what we've always done best and being innovative as a park district. But I think it's so critical that I know one of the pieces that we've really focused on is investing in our staff, investing in the people who are doing the work and who serve the district. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we have incredible staff and incredible leadership who, you know, anywhere from programming to naming parks to keeping trails open and to signage, maintenance, like it has taken a lot. And I think for me, that is the biggest, brightest shining star in all of this. Of course, to be resilient and to be able to adapt with all the changes and the needs of the community, but really how our staff and leadership administration have just come together and made it work. It's been so impressive and really powerful. So thank you, team THPRD. Like, this would not have happened without, you know, the hundreds of you. And I'm so happy to hear that, you know, we're down to 25 open positions or so versus what was it, 300 or 100 or whatever it was at one point in time. So just really so many kudos to staff.
Lisa?
I mean, I could talk about this for 2 hours, but I won't. But everything Holly said, plus, like, when I think of like one of the highlights from the last year, like the level of engagement that it didn't end, it continued to get innovative and thoughtful and intentional, ensuring that our communities were heard and acknowledged. And I just think about, I think it was at Bose Elementary, and I went to this outreach event, and it was wonderful, and it was so inclusive and thoughtful, and and somebody was smart enough to say, we're going to have all these families here. Like, what else should we have here? And the library was there and the city was there and it was so cool. And they had all this like wonderful signage that was in different languages. And it was just beautiful. And of course, I'm proud of SDCs and all the work that Janine did, and just forever grateful for that. And thank you to Doug for his amazing leadership.
Alfredo?
Well, obviously my experience over the past year is pretty limited, but I've said it before, and I will say that I definitely know that I joined a winning team when I was elected to this board, and there's so many things going in the right direction, and there's so many things I'm excited to help continue to push down the road and to deepen and enhance. You know, this could have been a very, you know, it could have been a disastrous time for the district, frankly, with all that it had to endure and absorb. You know, thanks to Doug and the board and all the staff, all the people on the front lines that we've mentioned, we've endured and in many ways thrived over the past year. So I'm glad to help keep us moving towards the place that we want to be from a financial standpoint, from an equity standpoint, from a programming standpoint, and all these great things. So keep going. Thanks.
So I will echo the same. Our staff, our management team, our to the front lines, everybody is just the gold standard of what you want as far as staff goes. The flexibility, the imagination, the execution, everything has just been like so wonderful. And yeah, the staff is just it's our diamond in the rough. So I am eternally grateful that we completed our vision task force and the team before the pandemic, because it gives us a perfect outline and baseline to rebuild or keep building off of. And so again, it's a reflection of our staff figuring out ways to keep our community interactive and getting all the information that we need to help be reflective of what our community wants as we move forward. I'm proud of our board in that I think we really see our staff and our management team, and we try to stay out of the way because we respect everything that you guys do, and we know you guys are so knowledgeable, and we trust you guys with our full hearts, and we are just here. It's not like a hierarchy or anything that we're the board at the top. We're here to support you and figure out ways that we as a team, as a whole, THPRD can move forward and provide the best opportunities for our community. So I am proud that we reflect the values that we set, and in turn are able just to be here and congratulate our staff and cheerlead our staff into doing the great work that they've been and have been doing.
Fantastic. Is there anyone on the staff team that wanted to just weigh in, particularly with any kind of perspective on the role that this board has played? I think the board has been incredibly generous and appreciative about staff and recognizing the impact of staff. It's a little harder for the board to kind of give itself kudos, but I would just open it up to anybody who would like to comment on how the board has helped contribute to these successes over the last year or 2 months.
I think Aisha has her hand up.
I do. I just wanted to point out one way in which your board absolutely mobilized and made something happen was in the restroom area. And that was something that, I mean, an idea grew into something bigger, grew into a conversation, grew into many, many conversations with many, many electeds. And in the end, it resulted in an incredible award to the district, and we may have even gotten some additional money that we weren't even asking for, and we're not going to say no to that. But that was something that started with your board, and we were kind of riding along, supporting as much as we could as a staff, but that was all you. So you and our lobbyist Kylie Bruno, she also did a lot of work with lots of meeting scheduling, but all of you talking to our electeds, having the relationships you have with them, that was a really critical success for us. And so I wanted to thank you.
I wanted to add as well, Thomas, that it is, I've worked for a variety of different boards now, and I have a lot of peers that work for a variety of different elected officials as well. And one thing I can tell you that enables all of us to act in the best intention for our patrons, and that is that we have the confidence of knowing where our board sits. And that confidence is all the difference in the world. It enables you to engage on subject matters, for instance, our recent soccer issues, that we pushed hard into it. And I knew all along I was not going to have a problem if you had testimony before you as early as this evening that contradicted what we said. I knew the board would be with us.
Anyone else have any? Thank you, both of you, for that. Anybody else have any comments or thoughts?
I think we have
Sabrina,
Sabrina. Yep.
Yeah.
I was just as a newer member of the management team, but as a member of staff, I've always really appreciated the support and the direction, the clear kind of dittoing what Doug said, that clear direction, so we know what we need to be doing, and that continued support has been amazing, and it's just been really helpful, and I know the staff all appreciate it.
Well, I hope that as you continue to reflect on the great accomplishments of the last year, 18 months, and your resilience and your successes, that you as a board are able to reflect both on the amazing contributions of your staff and your team and Doug, but also are able to articulate the way that you are doing a good job with government. You are doing a good, effective job in leadership. You're doing a great job from your seat as advocates and champions. And I hope you feel good about that, because I think lots of us feel great about that on your behalf. And I hope you're able to articulate that and own that, in addition to being generous with staff and your support and praise of them. So it's both. So congratulations to you as a board and you as a team. Well done. So Doug, you're going to talk about the parking lot, and I'm going to just give a 60-second intro. One of the things that you, as well as virtually all organizations in the nation and perhaps the world, were struggling with not that long ago was your limited resources in terms of money and time and people, and a never-ending influx of need, opportunity, new ideas, great suggestions. And kind of navigating the tension between being open to the ideas, the suggestions, the needs, the opportunities, but also doing that within the constraints of time, money, and people that you had. So you and your staff leader developed a tool to help navigate that tension, which I think has been successfully implemented by you. We recognize COVID, and I hate to use the term help, but COVID kind of forced your hand because it gave you fewer opportunities to kind of come up with new and different ideas. But still, you've exercised a lot of discipline and a lot of consistency to that model. So congratulations, both staff and board, for that. And as you open back up again, and as the economy recovers, and as you get back to the new normal, staying conscientious to that tool will be important as you go forward. So with that, Doug, talk to us.
Yes. Well, I've spoken with Tia and most of you all with regard to the following, and that is the Child Care Services Program concept that we're engaged in child care services, but we see an opportunity in front of us, and that is with ARPA funding, the last round of federal funding, via both interest from the city. There was more discussion last night at their meeting about child care services in the Park District, as well as Washington County now has allocated some funds for the like programming. And we sit in a place, I think, that is unique that, well, I would generally not be your number one advocate for adding something to the parking lot under the circumstances where we are. But the reality is this is a unique opportunity. It comes with funding. It's a little bit like the what was it? Hashtag team bathrooms. A unique opportunity in front of us, and when these occur, you find a way to do the lift, or at least position yourself to make the ask. So I would suggest that if the board is willing, that by consensus you would show agreement that yes, let's consider making this lift with Child Care Services Program, the enhanced program, enlarged program, and run it through the parking lot procedural process. In other words, we will do more due diligence. We've done some, but we will do more, particularly as the funding mechanisms become a little more clear. And then we come back to the board, probably at the rate the funding looks accessible, it'll be more like December. And we would have an active discussion with the board about here are our findings. And yes, it may be a lot of upside, but the one challenge area may be administratively, it's not an easy lift. So we have to put on the table, because that's what the parking lot was all about. What might we have to either reduce or eliminate to get there on the other end? But I think it's a great example, without going into any of the details, because that's what's in front of us, of a really interesting program expansion opportunity that will, really, I think, make a great difference for families in our community.
So you're suggesting that this be vetted through the official parking lot process and tool?
You bet.
Do you need a vote, or just a show of hands, or which you already have, I think?
I think I got my consensus.
You got your consensus. That's just fantastic.
Thank
How
you.
does it feel to actually put something in the parking lot to get vetted after keeping your hands off of it for
Yeah, if
months
we
and
had
months
all
and months?
yeah, if we had the staff videos on, you might get a reflection of that. But now everyone sees the same opportunity in front of us.
Any comments or questions about any of that?
I think this has something that comes up in programs and events a lot, is about childcare. I think we hear it a lot. I think all of us know how important it is as a board. And I would say if there's anything any of us board members can do to help, support this or move it forward or do discussions so that we can help staff in any way, we are all here to help support that. And sorry, Felicia, I should have let it go first. Go ahead.
Don't be silly. No, everything you said, I think this is very much in alignment with our values. Plus it ties to what we're experiencing around staffing shortage. We know that access to childcare is one of many reasons folks aren't going back to work, especially moms. And I think too, in this pandemic setting, like, we have to be really picky about what we engage in, and this comes with funds. And I think that over the last year and a half, we've been really strict about that, like, no ideas without money. Just like, that's not the position that we're in right now. So I think I'm excited. I hope this all works out.
I'll just say something real quick. Yeah, I think additionally, I think I know as board members, we've all come forward really trying to recognize, and I know that the staff feels this way, that we have these amazing partnerships that we could even further leverage. And this is the opportunity to do that. I mean, we do a good job at leveraging partnerships and collaborating with other agencies and community partners, but I think this is really a testament to that as well. So I'm thrilled about the opportunity. I do want to also reflect upon how we've been really mindful about our staff and, being mindful of all the work that they do and the stresses and the pressures there. And so if it does mean, like, Felicita said, how we sort of judge and weigh what we're going to put our efforts into, and this is one of those pieces right now that is really critical. So, and those partnerships may as well, like, let's leverage that too.
Fantastic. Anything else on this?
Lisa,
Great.
did you have more, or your hand was still up?
It doesn't say my hand is up. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
it says it on my, no, it might just be mine. I just want to make sure. Great. All right, Thomas, all yours.
Are we ready to move on to the next section? Jessica, can you plop up our agenda on the screen?
Sure. One moment while I go find it in the files.
Did she say go find it in the parking lot? Go find it in the file.
I like the verb you use, plop. Did you use the word plop?
Probably. I don't know. Did I say plop it up on the screen?
I don't know if I just misheard.
I don't know. I'm from Texas, so I say I'm always fixing to go do something too. I don't know. I say a lot of crazy things.
I love it.
Great. I'm glad you love it. So we are on the Reconfirming Our Values section of our discussion. So a couple of years ago, the board at that time spent a fair amount of time thinking about the issue of values and wanting to be clearer and more explicit about what your organizational values really were. And it made a decision to be succinct and clear and focused, as opposed to sometimes you look at these kinds of things and it's a long laundry list of things that are harder to manage to, harder to really be accountable to because they're just so lengthy. And at the time, these were the three overriding values that board identified. That board then, the next board, or the same board, I think, reconfirmed these values. And so we're bringing them in front of you today, not because we don't think you know what they are, because you forgot them, but because we just want to stop and pause and reflect and give ourselves a little time to kind of think about these and discuss these, to ground ourselves in these again, to ask ourselves how we're doing with these things, and just reconfirm that these are, in fact, our values moving forward. The one other thing I'll say is organizational values are things that really shouldn't change year to year. These are things that really ought to withstand budget cycles and general managers and specific board members. So it's not that they should never change or they can never change, but their power is in their consistency over time. So with that, maybe we could just take each of these and just kind of think out loud and see how we think we're doing, how we think we could be doing, and kind of confirm or not that this is still of value to us. So the first one is equity. So what say you?
Lisa?
I think that this board is ready to call out racial equity. I think this is the year. I think that all the decisions we've made over the last couple months and in the last year show that that is our value and that we lead with race and our commitment to addressing racial inequities. So I would love to see this be racial equity.
Okay. What do others of you on the board think of this idea?
So I just want to clarify, you want to define it even more to racial equity, correct? Lisa?
That's what I heard. What do others of you on the board think of that? Alfredo?
While in support of that, I guess my question would be, where does that leave things like disability, and that the emphasis of equitable access for, differently abled folks? Does that push that out? Or I mean, I don't have a hot take here that I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to kind of ask the intellectual question. Does that where do those two things come together, or is it really time to fully center racial equity, and is that kind of where you're going?
Elisa, what do you think?
I don't think this has to be an either or. We know that the disparities amongst race are the most embedded in our history. I would love, I hope over the next year this board can start thinking beyond access and thinking about disability justice. But I think these things are very much all aligned. I think if we center racial equity, if we center a commitment to racial justice, everyone benefits. Those that are most marginalized all will benefit. And I know this is a tricky conversation to have via Zoom. I want to acknowledge that, but I think it's worth exploring.
Heidi, what do you think?
I agree that I think I think it's important for us to call out racial equity. I think this is the time. I mean, the time is actually already passed for us to do so. And it's critical that we do. But to Alfredo's point as well, like not losing, other than, if we're talking about disability and accessibility in that respect, I'm even thinking about our services to our senior citizens and our older adult population and the inequities that may be there. So not saying that we shouldn't call it out, but is there a means by which to further articulate it? And I don't know. I agree with what Felicita is recommending. I don't want to lose the other pieces of equity as we, push through DIA beyond race.
Tia, what do you think?
I agree. I agree with both. It's really hard. I think I don't want to limit yes, racial equity is something that I feel like we're focusing on. This is definitely the year that we're doing it. As far as like reconfirming our values, I want it to be, I like the broadness of it because I think it helps our community understand that we're trying to, whether you're a senior, whether you're part of our scholarship programs, whether you're LGBTQA, whether you're disabled or, have something that prohibits you from, or a barrier to participation, I like that the value is just equity, in that our staff has the space to really focus on whatever we can for each member of our community. So, and the equity part, I think, is that we recognize we need to find barriers and do something about it. So it's not, but yeah, yeah.
Alfredo?
Yeah, just adding on to what kind of I had said earlier. I mean, I absolutely am cautious, wary of organizations who do put out just kind of a very sterile or too broad of a just equity as a box, right? But I'm also thinking about these values, these kind of evergreen values, racial equities certainly being one that is an evergreen value. I'm just wondering for this kind of, these three are both kind of broad, and I think you could break down, sustainability very to the core pillars of what that means as well. But maybe we start going too narrowed into your earlier point of having 6 or 7 things up here. So that's the only place. So yeah, I am kind of straddling the line annoyingly, but I absolutely hear and feel what Felicity is trying to get at in terms of calling this thing out and not just being satisfied with just kind of a bland equity sort of a value, but I'm having trouble bringing myself to, in this narrow space of the values, going all the way there. But I'll let her talk.
No, this is great. And I haven't changed my mind, but I do think you bring a good point, Alfredo, because community visioning, there's like 10 things under that, and sustainability kind of means 2 different things around financial and our commitment to natural resources. I think there's a bigger discussion to be had here about it all matters and how we make, but our values help staff make choices and help set the tone of the organization. So I mean, I kind of feel like I don't think I'm necessarily going to die on this hill, but I think it's worthy of discussion. I think this is a richer discussion than we've ever had, which is really exciting.
I think for me, equity as a value, your values are kind of more broad. If we really want to focus on something and make a commitment to, I almost think it should be like a budget priority, right? You put your money where your mouth is. So, and I feel like, but I don't know how that works on because we're not into that section yet. But but I think when you talk about values, they're racial. I mean, we've been working on racial equity or starting to and stuff, and with our like wonderful diversity statement, new statement that we came out with, like we put that out strong, and that's going to be something I think that we all refer back to also. But I don't know. I just feel like putting it just only on race and taking out the broadness of the equity also marginalizes other groups that already feel marginalized, and then to not be reflected in our values that way, I think doesn't send the right message to me, right?
Okay. Doug, did you want to say something?
Sure. Just a quick ad here for consideration. When we talk about our values, we generally always express equity with an emphasis on racial equity. And that's the way we package it. It creates focus, but it doesn't leave behind any groups. And it may be time, for the board's consideration to be more explicit when we write these out, that we put that statement right in there. And we may have the best of both worlds.
It sounds like you are fully committed in reconfirming your commitment to equity. And it sounds like Felicity's suggestion that this phrase become racial equity is of interest, potentially, and worthy of continued conversation. And I'm not sure I'm hearing kind of strong, uniform support for that right now. I'm just observing back.
Yeah, and I guess, what Doug said is kind of spot on, because everything that we've seen from budgeting to programming has led with a commitment to racial equity. So whether it's written, I guess it's just not written down here, but it is certainly exemplified in everything the district is doing.
Well, I think Doug's point too is that, behind each one of these words or phrases, there is always other material, other descriptions. And so when equity gets discussed or pitched or whatever, that saying we lead with race or the district leads its equity work with race is something that it already does in a way. But I'm not sure I hear that turning equity into the phrase racial equity is necessarily supported at this stage. Heidi?
I think also, just to piggyback and reflect again upon our new equity and inclusion statement, it really does lead with systemic racism, and oppression, which can be a number of other things. But racism is called out a couple of times within our equity and inclusion statement. So I want to, thank the staff for moving forward with that, and folks who helped put that together. But I think, Thomas, your recap is, I feel like, how you've stated it is like, we don't want to lose all of the other pieces, and that yes, racial equity is a lot of what we lead with, but to just have it state racial equity at this point in time, I don't know if that's, that's not where I am, because I think we have a responsibility to provide equitable services and opportunity beyond just race.
Okay.
And
I think there's consensus, so I think we can move on, Thomas.
Yeah. I was about to. So thank you all, and great discussion. And this is why it's important that we stop, reflect, take 3 steps back, look at these phrases and say, what do these mean to us? What do we feel about these things at this point? So let's move.
Can I also just say real quickly,
Sure.
And I want to thank Felicita, because she has helped us as a board, as a district, to continue to press into this. And these are the conversations that we really have to have. So I appreciate it being put forth, because equity is one thing, but racial equity, that's another, and we need to keep having that conversation. So thank you, Felicita, for everything you do and keeping that in our forefront, because we need to.
Great. So let's move on to sustainability. So when you see that word, how are you feeling about it? What's your take on how the district is manifesting this value, the progress that you're making, you as a board, your adherence to this value, and what's your general take at this point, each of you?
I feel like this one's like the least exciting. When I read it, I'm like, what's sustainability? But it's basically like what we've been doing throughout this whole COVID stuff, is just staying afloat and staying sustained and making sure that the park district like lasts forever and is available to everyone. So I feel like this is the least glamorous one, but like the most sustainable.
Anyone else?
I struggle this one only because there's so many different means by which to define sustainability. You know, there's climate change, climate action, you know, recycling, you know, that sort of form of sustainability. There's sustainability of fiscal sustainability and programming, and so, you know, if we were to pick anything apart, this would be one of the ones that I would say, is there a means by which for us to further articulate this one? Because it has so many, in my mind, so many different variables that I think of.
Okay. Alfredo and Lisa, what do you think?
I mean, it's, you know, it's kind of broad, kind of bland, but I think ultimately it's understood. I don't think it, well, at least it's not obvious to me that it's so ambiguous that people are struggling to understand how that should guide some general decisions or priorities. But if that becomes the case, where it's just people don't even know what this is that we're exactly talking about, then I'd be game to revisit. But yeah.
Okay, Felicia, do you have a thought?
I don't have anything that hasn't been said.
Okay, Heidi.
Well, as it was just said, it's understood, but I don't know, could any of us really define what we mean?
I feel like when we discussed this, I think last year, it was kind of cheating in that it was encompassing of many different things, from financial sustainability to natural resources. And I know this is a board that is committed to addressing climate change, and we always, you know, we want to talk about that, we want to do that work, but maybe it doesn't belong right here in values, because there's lots of things not in values that we deeply care about. So.
Well, let me reflect back to you that when this was identified originally a couple of years ago as one of your values, the context in which it was championed was more environmental sustainability and less institutional sustainability. So I'm not precluding the fact that sustainability can be defined in a lot of different ways, and one can certainly think of it in terms of organizational sustainability. But the reason it was championed was around more environmental sustainability, and that was more the genesis of it at the time, and it meant sustainability in the way you make decisions and how you spend your money, and how you operate, and how you steward resources, more from an environmental perspective, and not just a climate change perspective, but just more environmental. That was where this came from. Doug, do you think I just made that up, or do you concur that was the initial catalyst from the primary champion of this?
I needed you to talk for a few more minutes because I'm going to try to find the defined statements are in our budget document, and it does express out very similar to what several of you stated, both the perspective of the natural resource side, the climate change side, as well as financial stability and continuity, business continuity. So yeah, but again, we only use the term sustainability, so it's tricky.
And I think it may have evolved to be more inclusive. My recollection is that as it was initially championed, the focus didn't exclude organizational sustainability. It wasn't anti-organizational sustainability, but it was definitely pro-environmental sustainability was the
Yeah, If I could, Thomas, let me, it's just one sentence here or one and a half. I can't read as quickly as Holly can, but sustainability, it is our daily responsibility to be good stewards of our resources. The incorporation of environmental and financial sustainability practices includes using resources and materials wisely, respecting and conserving natural systems, and educating ourselves and our patrons. That's in our budget document.
Mm-hmm. What say you about this? Do you can reconfirm it? Do you say we're going to reconfirm it with a little more clarity among us as we go forward about what this means? Do you say,
oh, go ahead, Heidi.
Maybe it's, I mean, it's sort of equity and sustainability are different, but it's sort of the same type of dilemma. Like there's so much in that package that we don't want to lose. We don't want to lose the environmental, the financial, the resource. So to parse it out, is that helping us or hindering us? I don't know. Maybe it makes more sense for us to be more articulate and parse it out in our priorities or in another area versus the high level values. So I think it's a similar type of issue in the sense of with our thoughts about equity. Like it means so much and there's so many layers.
Okay. Anybody else have a thought about leaving it as is and fleshing it out in more detail elsewhere, or replacing it, or what do you think?
I was actually leaning the opposite way of maybe making it more specific to the environment or nature or climate change or something like that, because I think that when I was thinking about it, or when it just first popped in my head, and my first gut reaction was like, oh yeah, we're sustained as a company, that's what we're working for, financials and stuff. And I was like, if I put it in the environmental aspect, I feel like it's not a huge main focus. Not that it's just not something that's completely called out with that, we want to be future forward a lot, or like really innovative in what we think. And so I feel like if we call it out as a value and more focuses on natural resources or whatnot, I think I don't know, it may be more specific to help with staff, that this is our really good next focus, that it's specific to, we need to be greener, we need to like start planning more towards our future of being greener, of figuring out how to connect community with recycling, or those, like that's the types of programs, really reducing our carbon emissions, planting more trees, not cutting down trees, those kinds of things.
Okay.
So I mean, I think being fiscally sound is like just like any business needs to, but I mean, it should be a value, but it's like an obvious value, but maybe it's not an obvious value. I don't know.
Okay, Felicita?
I mean, am I muted? No.
No.
It's very similar to Tia's. One concern around like how staff utilize this, and like I'm guessing being vague isn't terribly helpful. I think that's my main thought right now.
All right. Heidi, you have another comment?
Reflecting upon what Felicita just said, yeah, I mean, what is most helpful to staff, but then I also think about what we've just experienced through the pandemic. And if we're not mindful about our business practice, our budget, the sustainability of just the basic entities of what we do, I would hate to lose sight of that as well. So I'm at a loss at this point in time as to what to say. It's a tricky one.
Okay.
Can I add something real quick? Yeah. This is funny because after I'm in my head trying to think about, okay, you just said equity is good enough. Is that, and now you're going to come back and say, no, I agree that, sustainability needs to be narrowed in. I would be probably in favor of some sort of like environmental sustainability, more specific, only in that as I think about it, sometimes environmental sustainability and financial sustainability don't overlap as neatly as we'd love to, and it may be a heck of a lot easier to be financially sustainable through environmentally unsustainable practices. So if and with the background of what you said, that the intent was first and foremost of an environmental nature, that's where I could see the most, and based on the discussions I've been a part of early on, I can see that's kind of where I believe the staff tends to take it most often. So it would make sense to me to narrow into the environmental, only so that it's not, well, this decision is pretty darn financially sustainable and very beneficial, but it's not quite environmental, or vice versa, or how do we, so yeah, so I'm kind of a two-face person here, and saying, yeah, maybe we can narrow in the sustainability a little bit.
Okay, Heidi?
Sorry, I just have my hand still up from before.
Okay. So this was championed by Ashley, and its original framework was green and environmental sustainability. Again, that doesn't mean that it can't also apply in other ways, or that the district didn't decide along the way to kind of make it be about both environmental and institutional. I'm just kind of grounding us in where this came from. So with that, what say you about this value?
I mean, I would like it to say environmental sustainability or some form of that, just so that I think it needs to be brought up. I think it's something we know it's important, but I feel like it kind of fades into the background as not the most important value. And I would like our district to focus on it really, as we make decisions on how we plan parks, how we do things, how we invest or reconstruct and those kinds of things. I really want somebody to look at our values and says equity. Everybody needs access to it. It needs to be a good steward to the environment, and whether that's like the critters, the people, our future, carbon emissions, all that kind of stuff, and community. It needs to reflect community. So that's kind of how I see it, as our staff is using it as check marks.
Okay. Heidi?
I love what you just said, Tia, a good steward to the environment, or that stewardship to the environment and to the climate. That, to me, encompasses that value right there.
Okay. Alfredo and Felicia, did you raise your hand? Somebody said yay, or did you raise your hand and make a comment?
That's, yeah, I like this. The word stewardship kind of calls to me too. I think that's fine. I mean, I think we have no other option but to be financially sustainable, right? As good board members, or at least hopefully as good board members. We're dreamers, Thomas. You know this. So we're gonna be difficult.
That's fine. Alfredo, did you already say what you?
No, I was just endorsing adding in the specification a little bit.
Okay.
So is it appropriate to make a motion right here? Not that we need to make a motion, but I love what Tia said.
So this would then become environmental sustainability, either that, or it would become environmental stewardship, something like that. But it would need to be more than stewardship. I think the key is, if this is about environment, then you probably want it to say environment. So either environmental sustainability or environmental stewardship or something. If that's your intention, if that be, again, that doesn't preclude being good stewards of in other ways, but that's the focus of your intention. So do you have a view one way or the other? Environmental sustainability, environmental stewardship?
Can we talk about the difference between stewardship and sustainability?
I just googled the definition of stewardship just to double check.
We have about 5 more minutes for this section, so if we could do it quickly. You've already signed on to sustainability, so the easiest, quickest way would be to say environmental sustainability.
Can we say sustainability and stewardship, or is that too many words?
It's a little, then you're kind of opening the box of the difference between sustainability and stewardship.
Okay.
And you've already gone to sustainability, so it would be, my recommendation to you is it would be simplest and easiest to put environmental in front of it. If you'd rather kind of have a longer protracted discussion, you sure could.
Okay, so I just Googled it, and stewardship is the job of supervising or taking care of something such as an organization or property. So I would like to say environmental stewardship. I don't want to just sustain the environment. I want to do something about it and make it better. So I really want that to be a value that we look at and continue forward with and move to be innovative with. So I would like it to say environmental stewardship if my board members also agree.
What do the rest of you think about environmental sustainability or environmental stewardship, or one or the other? What say you before we move on to the next phase?
I like stewardship.
I like stewardship. It sounds more active.
Okay. What do you think, Alfredo?
Yep, I have no problem. I like the environmental part most of all.
Great. Environmental stewardship. Fantastic. The third vision that you had, value that you had, was community vision and being connected to community vision, being committed to community vision, being accountable to community vision. And you wanted that to kind of be interwoven into everything and all decisions and planning and all of it. So I see thumbs up, I see a heart, I see, is there any conversation about that, what that means, how you're doing? If you're still...
I think it's perfect.
Great. Anybody else have a view on that? No? Yes? Good to go?
Good to go.
Great. So your values are equity, and we understand that in your equity work you are leading with race, but the phrase will continue to be equity for now. Sustainability will become environmental stewardship, which does not preclude being a good steward of other things in other ways, including your finances and your organization. It just means that this is a particular focus, and community vision will remain. So congratulations on a robust conversation so far. Nice work. Okay, so we've talked also about budget priorities, and these are things that certainly can change and can shift and morph. I think that last year when we talked about your budget priorities, though, we recognized that in order to have a real impact on an organization, or to move the needle, or to shift the trajectory, or to really get embedded, it's difficult to do that if you change your budget priorities every year, because then you're just kind of chasing after the latest, greatest thing, and that a single year may not be enough time, probably is not enough time really, to move the needle. So that was kind of a case for sticking with the budget priorities from the year prior, and those were looking at technology and how technology could make you more accessible, make you more equitable, make you more effective, reduce some costs, increase access, etc. Talked about investing in your people, be they employees and volunteers, and planning for future natural areas, facility and trail needs, and the funding resources to do that. So what do you think? Let's start with investing in our future through technology. And it wasn't technology for technology's sake. It was technology as a means to an end. So operating more efficiently, providing programs more effectively, equitably, et cetera, et cetera. How are you feeling about that as a continued budget priority?
Heidi?
It's maybe not specifically to this first one, but I think about what we've experienced through the pandemic, and it's going back to this notion of, fiscal sustainability. Right now, I appreciate our budget priorities, but I wonder if it makes sense for us to include something that relates to, I don't know. I don't know how to articulate it other than we're still trying to, come up to where we were before, if even close. And how do we reflect that in budget priorities? Or do we? I don't know. I guess it's more of a question. I'm sorry.
So let me make a quick comment to that. So to say that a budget priority, for example, includes investing in your employees or investing in technology, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to spend a lot of extra money on it, or you're going to even rob from Peter to pay Paul and do more of it, or you're going to commit to spend twice as much on it. It means that as you look at how you choose to spend the resources that you have, that this will continue to be an important lens through which you look. So it doesn't necessarily oblige you to do a bunch of new stuff. It just means it's going to be a primary lens that you look through.
Okay.
Does that help at all?
Yeah, that does. I mean, it's
Yeah.
doing with what you have. Yeah. Okay.
And it's just recognizing that technology will be, whether you have less money, more money, the same money, that technology is just an important lens that you're going to look through kind of all the time going forward. Tia?
So I think if we're just to quickly kind of move on, or for me to encompass everything about it, but I think it's perfect already. I think technology is something that's constantly changing. Our websites are, preventing us from getting hacked. Our hopefully future change in registrations to allow, to accommodate all the things that we need. That's something that we are constantly always looking forward to. Investing in our employees and volunteers, that's like hands down, something we need to keep doing for our employees, as they are our gold standard. They're our diamond in the rough. They do everything for us. I want to make sure that they feel supported and have everything that they need. The only other thing with this middle planning for future natural areas, facility, trail needs, and funding resources is, with COVID and everything, I feel like there needs to be some kind of statement about like community programming, or that brings something, because what sustainability of parks, trails, and other facilities, it's very like structural. It's very like things we buy and purchase, and I feel like there needs to be something that is pulled out more about investing in our community for whatever our community needs, whether that's like more programming, whether that's creating, needing more scholarship stuff or something. But I would like that to be a budget priority. And I don't know if community programming is the correct word, but I just feel like our middle thing is just very like real estate purchases.
What do the rest of you think about Tia's? She's really said two things. One, yes to technology, yes to investing in employees, continuing 1 and 3. And number two, maybe not so much. So you could either speak to both of those things or one of those things at a time.
I mean, I think that that center is still correct. I just feel like it needs, I don't know, to be expanded. I don't know, more focused.
Expanded or more focused?
Yeah. Both, like expanded to focus on something else also.
Focus on more. I'm feeling you. I don't know. So Alfredo, what do you think?
Yeah, so agree completely on the technology and employees and volunteers. I think what I thought I heard Tia saying was that maybe whereas this second one has kind of a long-term focus during this still unique fiscal year, something in there, a priority more on the short-term needs of the community, or being nimble to adapt or to prioritize changing community needs. That's what I thought I kind of heard a little of that, but
yeah, and it doesn't even have to be short term though, because we've seen the power of our, different programs in the parks, like our free fit programs, all of our chalk the block, like those kinds of things that bring community together. I would love that to be a budget priority, that we give this space for staff to really create these programs. That's not just for now because we're in COVID, but every year it brings communities together. It's creating things that brings gathering, those kinds of things that I would like to have focused on the budget also.
And I love that. I love that role of the district as a community builder. So I don't know exactly how all this works and how we would go about. This is also an area where I could see, and not to keep piling on this stuff, but to the earlier conversation on equity, this is a place where I could definitely see the leading or centering racial equity component of that called out a little bit more. But I'm also still trying to figure out what the rules of the game are here. So anyway, those are my early thoughts.
Okay. Heidi and Felicity, what do you think?
There are no rules. That's what I think, right?
Well, not just what do you think about what he said. What do you think about?
Well, maybe Thomas has rules for us.
Thomas has rules. Thomas is the only 3 budget priorities.
I got some rules. So what do you think about this second one?
I do think it's important because part of our, to what Tia's stating, this is really, natural areas, facilities, those long-term entities versus, a lot of what we do is programming and it isn't represented in here, but I don't know how to make it not its own.
Felisa, did you have a thought?
I always have a thought. I love these priorities, mostly because I've seen how they've shown up in our budgets the last 2 years and been like so moved and proud and excited. So I am perfectly comfortable with them as is, with an asterisk of that. I like what Tia's saying. For me, what I'm thinking about is like, we are in such a unique environment, and kind of calling that out and being mindful of the things that we need to do. That, yes, of course, we need to think about the future, but we also need to think about tomorrow, and how we're taking care of people tomorrow. So I still want to digest what Tia's saying, but I think I agree.
So it sounds like you might be interested in the possibility of, and just because something isn't listed as a budget priority doesn't mean you don't care about it, or you stop doing it, or you just shelve it or cease all activity on it. But if it's listed as a budget priority, it really needs to be something that is reflected in the investments that you choose to make. So if you would prefer to replace this with something that speaks more to community programming.
Well, I don't want to replace it. I just want to expand it. Like future facility trail needs and funding resources that includes investment to develop and sustain parks, trails, and community gathering or something like that. I don't know, community programming or community. I don't know what to I wouldn't even if we created like a new thing, I'm having trouble finding the word that would encompass it. And maybe Holly or Doug have a better word as they can sense my wants.
Let me say one other thing before Doug speaks. It is not generally helpful to take an existing thing and add other stuff into it. That does not generally help sharpen focus or clarify priorities, although it can be tempting to do. And the second is the genesis for this particular budget priority and the champion of this budget priority was really focused on natural areas and trails and parks. I'm not suggesting they were excluding community programs, but their focus really was on trails and parks and natural areas specifically. That was the intent behind this. Heidi?
If I may ask real quick, so the first one, we know the importance of technology. I'm curious, and maybe Doug or whomever may be able to speak to this, like where we are with our technology investments. I'm guessing we're going to have to continue with large investments, even though we have Munis and we're rolling forward with that, because it could also be investing in our future through it and eliminate the technology piece. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. It's more of a question of, I don't know what we need technology wise at this point in time. Well, I sort of do, but not to the greatest extent.
Yeah, on the technology side, we still have a reasonable year and a half of implementation in front of us. So there's still heavy investment and staff buildup as well that's in front of us. Again, it's an area that, it's a functional area that we're going to manage regardless of if it shows here, because, well, one, we are committed. As I've talked to all of you, we are well into this, and so we continue to march through. It's a necessary tool, obviously, for the future. But I think a programming component in here, it could happen. The middle one has it has a lot to do with our strategic and comprehensive planning processes for ensuring that we have the assets to deliver the services.
Okay.
I can see I've helped a lot.
Alfredo, you had a comment?
Yeah, as I think more, I really like seeing the technology one here. I just think from a consumer standpoint, which until very recently I exclusively was, if you ask me what's one area that the district has a deficit in terms of its impression with the community, I would say technology. And so I like having that just as kind of the whatever you call it, whatever, just a guidepost or something to continue to emphasize the importance to that. I really do like this role that the district has in community building and the work that it's done, especially over the last 18 months has been extraordinary and really meaningful. I would love to see it here. If we're only doing 3, then I don't know. I guess that's my bias, is I guess I really think that's a huge value that the district has done beyond, which includes its natural areas, but I think it really did a great job of bringing people together and trying to give people gathering places and community joy where they didn't have a lot of opportunities otherwise.
Would like planning for future community spaces and programming be too broad? Because it's like all this stuff is just very like I don't like that it's just very real estate stuff. And it's like, yes, we're always gonna, it's like when we're always hoarding stuff for the future, but I want to make sure that we're developing the now, and as we purchase these things that we really look into making sure. I don't know. I'm not very articulate.
Well,
okay.
let me add one other. We should all watch Thomas's expression, because this will step on one of his rules for sure, and that is, yeah. See, already it's a no.
No, I know
The
it's coming.
consideration would be, what if we considered adding a 4th?
His rule is 3. I said that already.
How about 3.5? Something to the effect of access for all through investment in our financial aid, our community events, and free programming.
I think the value, so these are my recommendations. The value of budget priorities are clarity and focus for staff as they bring budgets to you. And what they say yes to, what they say, we'd love to, but not now. We'd love to, but later. We'd love to, but someday. And the more you succumb to the temptation to just throw more stuff in and make your list longer, the less practical guidance you give your staff. This is where you make choices. And it doesn't mean that nothing will happen except these 3 things. It doesn't mean all activity ceases except these 3 things. But the value of it is the specificity and focus it provides. So if anything, you should have fewer, not more. And if you feel strongly, then I would recommend you consider replacing number 2 with something that more clearly states your priority for community programming, community outreach, community gathering, and really focus on that. And again, budget priorities don't have to be as evergreen as values. They really shouldn't change every year, but if this is more reflective of your focus as a board today, that would be perfectly reasonable to do.
It's
Heidi,
just like, oh yeah, go ahead.
Heidi, what do you think?
I am okay dropping the movement to add programming, and I think because we're always going to be doing programming. That's, I mean, the public, our community, that's part of the demand that they have of us. And our team does a great job. Like, we don't have, maybe we don't have to have that as a budget priority. I think the other pieces need to be called out more because they are maybe a little more hidden from our everyday, you know, the programming guide and what you register for and those types of things. They are a little more behind the scenes in some respect. And so I can drop the programming knowing that our team does such an amazing job as it is. And so I'll leave it at that. I don't think we should add a 4th one. And other than seeing Thomas's face, I'd love to see the faces of the expressions on the staff.
I did not turn their cameras off.
Bless you all, staff, for the suggestion that a 4th one go up there. I can drop the programming because we do a great job at that.
Okay. So Alfredo, you have your hand up too.
Yeah, I had my hand up to say the exact opposite thing that my esteemed colleague Heidi just said. In that I just, if you're asking my opinion on this, I see the value of not having more than three. I don't want, when you have 5 priorities, you don't have a single one maybe. So, but to me, the one that speaks to me the most is this for finance, for, if I'm reading it right, for FY 2021, 2022 is the continued emphasis on the community building programming and the accessible programming that we did.
Okay.
So that's just where I'm
Alright.
throwing it.
Can
So
I
we have
add
Sure.
something? So I would just say also, like, on opposite of Heidi's thing, is that our staff does a great job using SDCs and stuff to find these things to fund it and those kinds of things. But I think if we give space, especially as we talk about racial equity, especially as we talk about community building, as we talk about childcare and those kinds of things, I think we need to focus our budget more on that, maybe potentially this year, or give space for that. But that's just my opinion for this year.
Okay. So it sounds like Alfredo and Tia are really of the view that it would be more reflective of today's reality, today's limits, and the near future, to replace number 2 with something that is explicitly focused on more community programming, community building, community connections, which again is not directing staff to completely defund and do nothing about trails and natural areas. It just means it doesn't become one of the primary lenses for spending. And it sounds like Heidi's and Felicita may be of a different view. So Heidi and Felicita, do you have?
So we need Barbie.
But who's not here? So, Heidi and Felicita, do you have a thought?
I would like to abstain.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. I always have things.
Oh, you're joking. Oh, I thought you were being serious.
No, well, maybe in a minute, but I think I'm more in agreement with Heidi. Like, so these are the things that these are the big picture things that we have to be strategic about, that we need to set dollars aside for, and they're more true than ever. But I absolutely will throw down, we cannot have 4. We cannot do that to staff. That is not okay. So it has to be 3.
Okay. So it sounds like you are divided on this topic, or you lack consensus. A couple of you would like to see the second one change to reflect more of a commitment, a spending commitment on community programming and connections and bridge building. Two of you think that there is. Two of you, I'm just talking about who's here right now. 2 of you are more advocates for retaining these 3 as they exist for the reasons that you have stated. Doug, you don't get a vote, obviously, but do you have any counsel for us, knowing that we're not going to add a 4th one?
And you don't like the idea of expanding the middle one, so.
Nope.
Well, yeah, I think either, let's put it this way, both subject areas are going to happen because they need to happen. You know, the planning for the future is just an ongoing, that was a part of the overall presentation this evening, was the comprehensive plan, the strategic plans. Those are functionally critical items to help guide us in the future. It's going to happen, whether it's an emphasis here or not. And secondarily, you know, there isn't any question, our community programming has enabled us to reach a much greater depth in community connection. It has, particularly during COVID, it has enabled staff to come back to life, because there's nothing better than seeing people, you know, out and engaging, families and so forth. Really remarkable. And it's, we still got a road ahead of us, as we know.
So your recommendation around either sticking with or shifting these budget priorities, if you have one, and I'm not trying to make you have one, but if you happen to have one.
Well, I'm very comfortable with the three.
Okay.
I think with the acknowledgement that, you will see a continued emphasis on community programs.
Okay. So let me say this, and let me ask this question. So in the world of budget priorities, in the world of limited resources, or perhaps reduced resources, an institution that says these are our priorities doesn't necessarily say this is all we're going to do. We do nothing but these three. It doesn't say that, but it is making choices that these things are so important, they matter so much that they will choose these over other things, which doesn't mean they won't choose anything else. But when given the choice to fund more of that or more of this, they are choosing more of this because they are saying these things are critical investments for today and for the future. So to say, well, we're going to do all of it anyway, isn't quite in the spirit of setting budget priorities, because budget priorities reflect choices that we make. So I just want to say that, whether it means anything to any of you or not. And I guess part of what I'm doing is saying to the board, you can't have everything. You just can't, and you can't do everything, and it's not reasonable to expect your staff to be able to do everything. So I appreciate your staff saying we're going to do a lot of stuff anyway, but I don't think that lets you as a board off the hook to say when we have to choose, when we have to make decisions about what to do with our limited money, we choose this, we focus, we prioritize this. I think that still comes back to you. Or else you don't have budget priorities. Heidi, what do you think?
And this is just me personally speaking, my role as a board member is not so much the short term, what we do now this year. Like, I think that's part of why I'm okay. I know the programming is going to happen.
I see.
But that I have a responsibility to our community to foresee that there are going to be the facilities and the opportunities 10, 20, 50 years from now, and that we maintain and that we purchase as, the cost of everything climbs, that needs to be really called out. So I think I'm coming maybe from a little more of that perspective of we are the ones who have that duty to look 10, 20 years out, 50 years out.
Okay.
And our staff does an amazing job, looking at what are we doing next summer? What are we doing, next month kind of thing. So.
Okay. Tia?
So I'm on the opposite end because this budget priority is for 2021 and 2022. It's not for, the long term. And so, and for me, I'm like, the SDCs can only be spent on these kinds of development stuff, right? But when we talk about our general budget, and if you want to talk about like putting in, I don't know, like some park structure versus like, or developing a park structure or something like that versus like some kind of programming that uplifts a marginalized community or something, I would like that to be the focus this year, of that gets picked over something else that can be put off for a while.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I want to focus less on real estate development and more on community development. And I think that, you know, as we talk about before about our values of community vision and equity, I think having a dedicated budget to really getting into the weeds of things, whether that's, you know, childcare, any of that, you know, all and I would probably disagree that the community we do, like because we've had to cut back on some programmings, you know, because of our staff issues or those kinds of things, or budget issues, or opening LC Stir and stuff like that. So I would like to see that we keep that as a main focus over purchasing property or something like that
Okay.
from the general budget. That's how I see things.
Okay. So you are still of mixed mind about this. And part of what I really appreciate and respect about this is that it's really thoughtful and meaty conversation. And all of these perspectives are true in their own way. It's not that one perspective is right and all the others are wrong. So in your remaining 4 minutes, would you like to table this for a time when Barbie is able to join you? Or do you want to continue to move through to try to change these tonight, or to reaffirm them tonight? Or do you want, you can't kick the can down the road very far. I mean, you got to provide guidance to staff quickly. So Barbie would need to be able to weigh in pretty quickly. And do you even want to do this on a 3-2 kind of vote? I mean, do you want to, what do you think? So the question is, what do you think about the process for the next steps? Not what do you think about, because I think everybody's spoken to what they think about the 3 priorities. This is more, what do you think about how to resolve this or get to the next step?
As a suggestion, you know, you certainly could use your November board meeting to presumably finalize this particular item. I caution regrouping on the entirety, but that will give us plenty of time if November the decision is made. And we could bless the rest of the document as well so that it's finalized.
I think it's all been blessed, but this one, to me, it feels like everyone is blessed it, but this is the one kind of outstanding piece. Tia, Felicita, Heidi, in terms of process for next steps, what do you think? Oh, and Alfredo too. Felicita?
Oh, I like the idea of asking Barbie. I mean, there's so much here that she didn't get to shape and provide input on. So, I mean, you know, no lobbying, and Doug can call her and ask candid thoughts, and it'll break a tie. And that's okay.
Okay. All right. Tia, what do you think?
I think that's fine.
Great. Heidi, what do you think about that as process for next step?
I agree. I'd love to have Barbie's input, and I would also throw in there that, you know, there could be a little wordsmithing to our first priority, because it does talk about programs and services. I mean, it's really heavily focused on technology, and maybe there's something a little bit beyond technology, but that's just another. But yes, I would love to know what Barbie has, you know, her thoughts around it too.
Okay. Alfredo, in terms of process?
Yeah, I would love to get Barbie's input specifically on the second one, just if we're in the interest of time. I also would be curious what my fellow board member, I mean, for me to have, while in general it's nothing board needs to decide has to be unanimous, I mean, I'm not so far away from that I would, you know, I wonder how important it is to the staff to know that the board is in alignment on the on the fiscal year priorities, and it's not just kind of a we're going this way, you know. So I don't have an answer for that now, but I would just say I'm not so line in the sand that I would risk having staff say, well, you know, be a little unsure of where the board wants to go with budget priorities. So that being said, I look forward to chatting with Barbie for sure.
So what I hear is that you have reconfirmed your values as equity, environmental stewardship, and community vision. You have reaffirmed 2 of your 3 budget priorities, and you will, with the absent board members' input, finalize or change or reaffirm the 2nd priority by your November meeting or at your November meeting.
Yes.
And at that November meeting, you can decide if a 3-2 vote is the way you want to go, or to Alfredo's point, if you'd prefer to not have a 3-2 vote, and the pros and cons and the realities with that. It is 6:01. Great work. And I applaud your candid, thoughtful, informed, passionate conversations and discussion. And I think only good comes out of those kinds of conversations. So congratulations on another thoughtful board retreat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Go
Couldn't do it without you.
Thank you.
You are welcome. I think you're done with me. Is that correct?
I think so. I think we're
Oh,
going
we're never
to
done with you, Thomas.
Until next time.
Out of here. Congratulations. Go team. Great work. I will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
So I think we have a break, right, Doug, from 6 to 6:30.
Correct.
All
So
right.
we will adjourn and reconvene in 28 minutes, people.
All right. Thank you.